Hi everybody, I'm Kelley Harrell and you're listening to What in the Weird. The weekly rune was published Monday. For those who are subscribed to it through Patreon, it came out Sunday, ad-free. This week we continue with the half-month Ewaz, which is the rune of taking things deeper at a spiritual level, seeing the spiritual source of things. The rune exalting Ewaz is Yera, which gives a promising outlook for our efforts to take things to that deeper shamanistic level. The rune speaking in the voice of authority this week is again Fehu, which is pretty awesome. It never happens. We don't usually get a repetition of the odd runes in that way. And by this, I mean we haven't had a repetition of Fehu out of its native place in the half-month cycle in the 6 years that I've written the weekly rune. So Fehu in this position implies a beneficial outcome to the soul grunt work we're being asked to do. All told, this week has an intense start and emphasis, though it resolves with a payout that we can and should share with others. I've had several listeners along that line of sharing with others write in to tell me that I'm starting in the middle with this podcast, meaning a lot of you aren't feeling confident about the runes, maybe not very knowledgeable, just generally familiar, and do you want to learn more of the fundamental bits about the runes? I have always avoided anything that even remotely looks like a dictionary, whether it's dream dictionary, animal guide indices, crystal meanings, you name it. I'm a marginal fan of lexicons that prescribe what something is for all time to all beings. It doesn't work that way. In application of spiritual esoteric concepts, dictionaries don't fit there. I said it out loud. Of course, that's not to say that they aren't good guidelines. They are good starting points to learn the basics of the runes, then come into your own nuanced relationship with them. So with that in mind, today I'm going to talk about resources for learning the runes and give some pretty serious consideration to devoting an episode to each rune and building our relationship with the runes together. So I'm going to talk about some of my favorite resources and a few not so favorite ones. Foremost, of course, are books. And authors whose work I recommend are Nigel Pennick, always, #fangirl, Freya Oswin, same thing, Diana Paxson, and Katie Gerard. You really can't go wrong with the work of these folks in the areas of historic, cultural, and mythological roots of the runes. If you really want to break it down and get hardcore about it, you need to read the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, which is by Snorri Sturluson. They are both translated heavily, so it's not really hard to get good, relatable copies of the Eddas. The Prose Edda in particular contains the Havamal, which contains the story of Odin's quest after the runes. Yes, they're all challenging to read. Do some research, find some good translations. There are several online, and yes, I've read them, every word. If you want hardcore, reading the Eddas is where you go. My book isn't out yet. It's due out this September, called Runic Book of Days, and it will have a runes primer in it. Part 1 of the book is discussing the runic meanings and how they relate in a cultural context to everyday use still for modern seekers. But part 2 of the book is a step-by-step guide to working with the runes through the half-months, with devotions for each rune and initiations for each of the 8 Sabbats. So this book is focused on coming into deep relationship with the runes throughout the year. If you look through some of the earlier episodes of What in the Weird, you'll find some information about the runic half-months and how those come together in a calendar that can inform our work with the runes and our outlook on how they fit into daily life still. So you can search for Runic Book of Days on Amazon to pre-order it. Also, don't forget, the Weekly Rune is a really good reference. There are 6 years of archived insight into the runes, not just as staves and their meanings, but regarding using them again in season. You can find those archives at soulintentarts.com. If you want something light but very comprehensive on the runes, the first website I suggest is sunnyway.com. It's been around for ages, and it's a great general resource on the runes, and not just the Elder Futhark. If you're curious about other Futharks, this website covers the Armenin, the Anglo-Saxon, and the Younger Futhark as well. If you want to understand the mythology behind the runes and the culture better, Norse-mythology.org, or Norse Mythology for Smart People is what it's called. I'm not making that up. I swear that's what it's called. And it is an absolutely ace website. Given the present fascination with Norse culture, if you want to understand the spiritual overtones that preceded the Vikings, NorseMythology.org is your website. There are also some great video series online, including the work of Maria Kvilhaug. You can find her writing and blog at ladyofthelabyrinth.com. She's also on YouTube if you search for her name. She is fabulous. She is an Old Norse scholar, and her body of work is incredible. It covers everything from language, mythology, runes, notable personalities in the mythology. It's just amazing. Also, Sigga Manning, if you search for her on YouTube, she has some fabulous videos about the runes. And I can't leave out the YouTube videos of Jackson Crawford. He is a general scholar of Old Norse studies and languages, but he has a few focused videos on the Elder Futhark. His take is purely academic in a way that's refreshing against all the New Age romanticization that overlooks the actual historic roots of the runes and the cultures they came from. Those are my go-to resources. So I said that there were a couple that I suggest avoiding, that I personally avoid. And the first one is the work of Erdred Thorson, whose legal name is Stephen Flowers. Thorson has been long heralded for being a deeply well-informed rune scholar, and he is. There's no two ways around that. Though he's also very publicly aligned with white nationalist groups, and for that reason, I choose not to support his work. I talk about it, I put it out there, and I just express it for what it is. You use your choice. Another one is Ralph Bloom, who wrote the Book of Runes in the 80s, which was the gateway material for most runesters. It was for me. I don't suggest using Bloom's work because he changed the runes. He changed the order and he altered the meanings with no preface explaining that he was doing that. He put his version forward as if they were the runes for all time, which warped the study of them for many people. So fast forward to now, there are tons of books and works out there that we have access to. He doesn't have to be the gateway material anymore, so maybe it's not that big a deal. Like people know now that he took great liberties and did not say that he was doing so. Nonetheless, his book remains the #1 book on runes on Amazon. So my challenge to you is to go out and get some of these more thorough books, later books by people who present the material in their historic, cultural, and mythological light, and where they put their own spin on it. They clearly say that that's what they're doing. I would really love to see that book get bumped down from #1. Not because I wish him ill will, but because it really isn't a good resource on the runes. Bloom is also the origin of the blank rune, which, if most of you know, it didn't exist in the Elder Futhark. He made it up, and he put it forward as if it had been there forever. So, again, I can't even. I have to ask me about the blank rune. Please ask me. about the blank rune. Those are my resources. Those are the ones that I stand by and the ones that I step aside from. I would love to know what your favorite resources are on the runes. You can let me know by calling in through the Anchor app, which you can download for Android or Apple and listen there. Or you can email me at kelly@soulintentarts.com. Also, check out the earlier episodes of What in the Weird by downloading them from Google Play or iTunes, and also lots of other platforms. I'm Kelley, and this has been What in the Weird.